And for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted to the Chelmsford Public Schools website for interested community members to access and watch. In-person public participation will be taking place tonight in accordance with the Chelmsford School Committee Public Participation Guidelines. Anyone wishing to speak tonight during the public input portion of the meeting has notified the superintendent's office of their desire to speak and has been provided with these guidelines. Upon request, written comments received no later than 12 p.m. on the day of this meeting will also be read and made a part of the record of the meeting during the second public comment session. Are there any members of the press here tonight? Okay, so welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. To start off tonight's meeting, we're going to have Sue McKinnon talk about the Chelmsford Proclamation, Land Acknowledgement Proclamation, and read it for us.
Sure. So in recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day, which coincides with the Columbus Day holiday, I'm going to read a proclamation that the select board members have adopted for the town to acknowledge and recognize and celebrate the Native people who lived here prior to settlers coming from everywhere else. So the land acknowledgement reads, whereas the town of Chelmsford acknowledges that its land upon which the government buildings, town common, and libraries are situated is a traditional and ancestral territory of many diverse Indigenous nations, and we strive to honor these peoples. And whereas the town of Chelmsford acknowledges the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this land, now known as Chelmsford, and we honor the Indigenous peoples still connected to this land on which we live, work, and learn. And whereas this area comprises in part the homelands of the Pawtucket, Pennacook, Abenaki, and their close neighbors, the Machuset and Nipmuc peoples. And whereas the town of Chelmsford extends our deep respect to citizens of these nations who live here and elsewhere today, and their ancestors who have lived here for generations. Therefore, be it resolved, the town of Chelmsford formally recognizes, expresses appreciation for, and honors the Indigenous peoples who have an historic relationship with the lands of the town. And further, the Chelmsford Select Board respectfully recommends positive action on this proclamation by residents, local businesses, educators, community and faith-based organizations, town employees, town boards, and town committees. Signed this 14th day of March, 2022 by the Select Board members.
Thank you very much. Okay, our first order of business is to approve the minutes from September 19th.
Okay, I make a motion to approve our minutes from our meeting on September 19th, 2023.
May you second? You need a second.
Second.
Okay. Does anybody have any corrections? Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0 in favor.
Abstain.
Oh, excuse me, John, I apologize.
Okay.
4-0 in favor, 1 abstain. John, I'm very sorry.
It's okay. I should have been here.
Okay, so next up, we have our student representatives with an update on things at the high school.
So at the high school, there have been several colleges that have visited. Some include NYU, Dartmouth, Mass College of Liberal Arts, Indiana University, University of Vermont, Simmons College, Middlebury College, University of Tampa, University of Maine at Farmington. And the SATs are scheduled for October 7th, and clubs and activities are starting up at the high school. CHS picture retakes will be November 9th, late buses will begin October 17th, and 8th grade parent night is scheduled for October 24th, and curriculum night was a huge success, and many families attended and met their students' teachers, and Dean and Principal Murray, and parents also had the opportunity to purchase pizza from the class of 2024, as well as see some of the other clubs that were in attendance. And student flu vaccines will be happening on October 18th, and a Connect Ed has been sent out and will be sent again as we get closer. And the Lions varsity golf team is off to a great start. They're currently in first place in the MVC with a 5-1 record and hope to remain there this season.
Thank you.
Our girls varsity soccer team is really battling out on the pitch as well. The Lady Lions have a 4-1-4 record in a tough Merrimack Valley conference with some great wins over skilled teams, and right now they're actually playing Billerica, so good luck to them. And starting the new year off strong, the Chelmsford High School Ecology Club has continued their composting initiative this academic school year at all 3 lunches at the high school. This all comes after the Ecology Club received a $10,000 grant from New England Biolabs to help continue their composting program. CHS produces over 2.25 tons of compost each week, all of which would have otherwise gone to landfills. And congratulations to junior Sophia Roy for winning 3rd place in informative speaking at the 31st annual Yale Invitational High School Tournament in New Haven, Connecticut this past weekend. Her hard work and dedication to speech and debate and her constant striving to win has paid off. The National Speech and Debate Association has announced that Chelmsford High School Speech and Debate team has earned a spot in the association's 100 Club. According to the NSD website, each year the 100 chapters with the largest number of new degrees receive the top 100 school designation. Nice job all around for the CHS Speech and Debate team.
Thank you both very much. Do we have any good news tonight?
Yes, good news tonight. If you didn't catch it in last week's newsletter, we have 7 seniors that have already met the requirements for the seal of biliteracy. And we have Grace Beliza, who received it in ASL, Kenny Bocanegra, who received it in Spanish, Ava Hajna in ASL, Bryn Munson in ASL, Emily Nardino Correa in Spanish, Kristen Shea in ASL, and Brinley Williamson in ASL. So congratulations to those students, and there'll be some continued testing throughout the school year. You can sign up online, and you can go to the World Language Department on the website if you're looking for the information to sign up if you would like to take the seal of biliteracy to be on your diploma when you graduate.
Great, thank you. We are now at the first public input session. Did we have anybody register to speak tonight?
We did not.
Okay, so moving on to new business.
Sure, jumping into new business. First item actually on the agenda this evening, I'm going to invite Todd Melanson from the Chelmsford Water District. And Todd may have some folks with him that he certainly can have come up and introduce. I talked to Todd a little bit over the summertime about a couple of upcoming projects that the Chelmsford Water District is working on. And one in particular corresponds to the school, so possibly utilizing some school property. So invited Todd to come and do a little presentation to the school committee to share some of the stuff that he's been working on and to update the school committee with regard to his plans. So Todd, welcome aboard, and please introduce your guests, and the floor is yours.
Good enough. I'm Todd Melanson, I'm the Environmental Compliance Manager for the Chelmsford Water District. I'm here representing the district. This is John Harrington, he's a member of the Board of Water Commissioners. This is Steve Danfresco, he's the Associate Vice President of AECOM, the engineering company that was chosen to help us with our PFAS issue. My presentation is kind of bland. I'm either over the top with too much or too bland, but PFAS are what is called polyfluorinated alkaline substances, or PFAS. They are newly regulated as of 2020. Unfortunately, like a lot of other places, if not most other places, they are in our water. They're pretty much in anything. I would recommend, if you have any questions about PFAS, go to chelmsfordwater.com. We have an entire tab of the website based on information about PFAS. It is very good information. Please don't Google it. You will find all sorts of information that will scare you. The information on there is well vetted, and they're trusted resources. They're in everything that you have in your everyday house. It's in your clothing, it's in your food, bedding, anything water resistant, stain resistant, non-stick, fire retardant has PFAS in it. Mass DEP started regulating in 2020. They took the lead as one of the states that dealt with it as a family. So we are regulated at 20 parts per trillion. To give you an idea how small that is, 1 part per trillion is 1 ink drop in 20 Olympic swimming pools. And it's any combination of 6 compounds. So it's not just one. It's if there's the addition of the 6 compounds exceeds 20, then you are in violation. We did exceed the violation in, I think it was August of 2021. We had to issue a public notice, and it put us on the course of taking action. We are under orders to fix it. Doesn't matter if you're one over, I think our average was 21 at the time. It since has gone below, so we've been allowed to keep planning and not have to take anything off. Our main well for that treatment plant is the one that is the most affected. We really can't run the plant without that well. So while we've been below the 20, PFAS has always been there. Riverneck has it, but has never come close to exceeding. We have a seasonal plant, Smith Street. That is actually the lowest, but it's not something that could support on its own the entirety of what Crooked Spring supplies. Riverneck averages about 16 parts per trillion. Smith Street averages about 11. Crooked Spring runs right around 18, so we're real close to the 20 on it. So we've been working for the last 3 years on an engineering solution to it. But keep in mind, EPA's new limit that they're proposing to have by the end of the year is 44 parts per trillion for PFOA and PFOS, and those are two of the compounds. If that is to pass, everything, all of ours will be in violation, as well as most other communities. There's something on the order of 56 treatment facilities under construction or set to be constructed. And the way everything is gonna be handled is through what they call the state revolving fund. All that federal money that came in, the state had a financial mechanism to spread it out among the state to all the communities, and that was through what is called the state revolving fund. There's a drinking water one and a wastewater one. PFAS will be currently 0% interest with a certain amount of principal forgiveness. So we actually filed for our SRF in August.
Yes.
With the plans for all three treatment plants. Primary plans for Crooked Spring, and then partial plans going forward for Smith Street and Riverneck. Let's see. That's what brings me to you. We're gonna the plans are to build 2 treatment plants. These are not insignificant plants. To give you an idea, we've found through the pilot study and analysis, something called GAC, granular activated carbon, to be the best method currently to remove PFAS for us. Those vessels are roughly 15 feet in diameter and 20 to 28 feet high, depending on which company you use. They're not gonna fit in our buildings, they're gonna be an extra one. Where Smith Street is a seasonal plant,
And we need 4 of them.
four and 6, or.
Right.
So, I
Per
mean,
facility.
it's not just one, it's 4 to 6 per facility. Thank you. Smith Street, because it's seasonal, doesn't make sense to build one. Also, the water, it has less PFAS in it. So the idea was to treat the water for iron and manganese, like we do now at the plant, and then take a transmission line from Smith Street to Crooked Spring. It would go Smith Street, Parkhurst. If we were to stay on the road, it would go across North Road, up Davis Road to Old Westford to Graniteville, to Richardson to Crooked Spring. And at the end of this, there's a map. In looking at it, that's a lot of work, that's a lot of disruption to the community, and it's actually a lot of money. Kind of looked at it, and what we're here to ask is for you to consider giving us an easement on the boundaries of school property so that we can put the transmission main on your property. So we got to North Road off of Parkhurst, take a right. Just before you get this building, take a left. Come around, go the edge of McCarthy, cross over Old Westford, Graniteville, just in single ditches. You hit the high school property, you go through that to Richardson Road, cut across Richardson, you're on Parker. The road to Crooked Spring is Doak Drive, so if we stayed on Parker until we've got right across there, it would go across. Every community I've seen dealing with PFAS, the community has had to work together. Some people have to give up. These are not insubstantial costs we're talking about. I think we're talking about $1 million in savings at the minimum. Also time. If we were to stay on the road, there would be a large disruption for your school bus routes on Davis, because you'd pretty much have to shut that down. Same with some of the other routes. This gets it done quicker and cheaper. And so we'd like you to consider that. It will help your community out. As I said, the numbers we're talking about aren't insignificant. The last picture is the proposed route. So the red is the one that'll stay on the road. So on the right-hand side is Smith Street. The Smith Street plant, it would go up the driveway for Smith Street, down Smith Street to Parkhurst. Like I said, take the right onto North Road. And this is just an estimation. What we'd be asking for first is permission to do a survey and borings, and that would dictate where the easement would go, where the water main would go. And just following a basic route, like I said, across Old Westford, along the, in Graniteville, right at the junction right there, and then, across, along the fields, and trying to stay as much out of your way as possible on the boundaries. Crossing Richardson Road onto Parker's property and staying there until we can get to, Doak Drive. If you want, we can get to the town's GIS if you needed to look at closer. The purple route is the road that actually stays on the road.
Yeah.
We're talking, and Steve can speak to this. I think conservative estimate on the part on your property would roughly be 200 feet a day. So we're talking 25 days instead of what it would take to go up Davis and the rest of the roads. Davis kind of scares me. There's an awful lot of ledge underneath there. So the time there would be significant. So if you want to add anything, Steve?
I think you've said a lot. If folks have questions, we'll try to entertain and respond to any questions. We're talking about a 10-inch water main. That's the diameter, so it's not huge.
I mean, I'm just gonna be,
Can I give just a little context? Can I just give a little context?
go, sure, of course.
Thanks. Well, it might just help the discussion. So when Todd had come to me this summer, and obviously talked to Paul as well, I didn't have a big issue with, and it was, I think, a well-laid-out plan to do this. The question is, I think the town definitely owns the properties. We're kind of tenants in the properties. So I don't think the school committee themselves actually would grant the easement. That would have to go through like Paul and town council. And the thought process was come to the school committee and get the opinion of the school committee. Obviously, if you were on board with it, I don't think there's any reason why the town would object to it. But if there were questions or concerns, we certainly would want to talk about that. But to me, at least from my perspective, it looked like a well-laid-out plan. I don't have a problem at all cutting across the property lines and particularly staying right on the lines themselves if it helps the town. As far as some of the new roads we've actually put in, kind of minimizing them getting cut up and having to be redone. I didn't see any issues on my part, but we just thought at this point it'd be nice to have Todd and the group come in. And ultimately, if the school committee is just okay with it, we would just relay that to Town Manager Cohen, and they would work through whatever the actual legal stuff is. There's nothing on that on the school committee. It was just more for kind of your opinion and take on it, so.
Thank you for correcting me on that. I do remember us discussing that, so I apologize.
No, I just wanted to give a little context.
Yep.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to say. I'm gonna support you on that 100%. There's no question. It's better for the town. It's better for you. There's a bunch of straight lines as opposed to, I mean, it just logically makes sense. Yeah, and the town supports us pretty well. So, I mean, I have no concerns.
Thank you.
And it sounds like if you do go through the fields, you gotta stay kind of the periphery of the field, so you're not
As much as-
interrupting any playing fields or anything like that. So, that would be my only.
Well, and the other thing too is, we had talked about trying to minimize impact during like school days so that we don't draw our attention away. I'll say two things to that. One is we can put it in the contract because it is 25 days
We figure
roughly.
about 25 days of work to go through.
We could do it, have it in the contract to do in the summer if it became feasible to do with that. The other thing is I've been one of the sponsors, so to speak, of the Innovative Pathways Program, and working with John Morris, and brought up that if we're going by school and we really want to get kids interested in this innovative pathways and get people in our industry, because our industry needs people more than you could imagine. And there'll be everything from surveying to actually doing the work with some pretty neat equipment, kind of showing that that side of it, the amount of the engineering that goes into it and stuff like that. John said we could definitely work together and put something together in terms of the Innovative Pathways Program. But also we want to minimize the impact on your students, and so we would be directed to you in that regard.
Yeah, it's just the initial plans, and I know they have to be surveying and things like this, was really just going on the property line. It wasn't really cutting across any of our field space or anything like that. So I think that would really be minimal. I don't have concerns on that.
Right? I think this is,
Great.
can you avoid Parkhurst? No, I'm with you.
No, there's no, we looked,
You're stuck in the middle.
we actually looked at trying to use the Mass DOT easement.
Yep.
That won't happen.
Coming right through your driveway, Maria.
It is, it's
I
right
know.
here.
It goes
Stop
my
shop.
driveway.
It's, we tried to limit the impact to the community as much as possible.
Right.
But we're also trying to limit the cost. Smith Street also, because the PFAS is so much lower than the other ones, it will help dilute out the PFAS at Crooked. And what that does, so that you understand, these, they're different than our treatment facilities now. They're gonna absorb PFAS and anything else like total organic carbons and anything in that realm. And it's based on contact time. So it starts at the top, and that's why our filters are horizontal,
Your current filters.
my current filters. These will be vertical, okay? And it's contact time, and we will have to measure as PFAS gets down into those, especially at the 4 parts per trillion if that passes. By diluting out the PFAS with Smith Street water going to Crooked, it will extend the life of those. What's the cost to change out a filter?
Oh, boy.
It's like 150 to 200.
Oh, all of that, sure.
So if we can, then that affects our operating. So if we can limit the impacts on that, this is why this is so important to us. So if you could write a letter of support when we approach the town with it.
Susan, is there anything that you had a question about?
Oh, I think it looks very sensible, and seeing that it just is at the edges of the property, I don't see it being a super big impact.
So, I do want to say that I think it's been the position of this school committee to recognize that we're part of the town. And I think anything that we can do to support the town, we are more than happy to do. The second thing I wanted to say is to thank you very much for your participation in the Innovation Pathways Program. I remember when you came and spoke when Governor Healy was here.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was very, very impressed with your involvement in that program, and I think it's really terrific that we have that, and I'm looking forward to that continuing. And as far as the disruption to the schools are concerned, I appreciate you trying to minimize that, but I also think it's a good lesson for kids to understand what this is all about and why it is that we all have to work together to be able to address this issue. And thank you for your courtesy for coming before the committee and asking for our opinion. And I think we do wholeheartedly support this. Jay, do we need to take a formal vote?
I think it would be wise to just take a motion to support this, and then I think that's the direction of the committee. I will just work with Todd and Paul with regard to any of the kind of paperwork that needs to be done, and I'll keep you in the loop as we go. But maybe just a vote of support would be helpful.
And then that way it'll just make it a more formal thing for you, okay, as you go forward.
I just want to mention, beyond the innovative pathways, the teachers of that I've dealt with in the district have been outstanding.
Thank you.
I've given presentations both at Parker and McCarthy. I work quite regularly with the science department, Michelle Kender, given presentations there for years. And I always appreciate the time they've given me. The students, I'm an old Army sergeant. I was in an armor unit. The kids were always really great and involved, and it's always been a pleasure to work with the schools, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Dennis?
Yep, I make a motion to support the Chelmsford Water District School Properties Route Proposal as presented tonight.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. 5-0 in favor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
Yeah,
your time.
thank you, guys.
Very good.
And just let me know if you need anything from us as far as like sign-offs, and I'll communicate with Paul and just let him know that we're in support. So if there's something that needs to be done on the town side, they can go ahead and do that.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, it's nice to see you. Take care.
Our second item on the agenda this evening is another presentation that Linda has put together with regard to our 2003 spring MCAS results and the accountability rating from DESI. So I will turn it over to Linda, and she's very excited about this presentation.
Very excited, very excited.
We'll get going.
No, it's a lot of information. It's a lot of information, and we'll go through it little by little. So in 2018, that is when the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education had moved to start with the accountability results that we're now coming back to. You'll see in 2023. And this was to allow districts to know what type of assistance they might need as a district as they're going through their testing process and see how students are actually performing. So with this accountability system, there's two different criteria that are used. We have the normative, which is the percentiles that we've all been actually used to using. And basically with the normative component, it basically gives us information about how schools are doing compared to other schools within the state. So we've been used to, percentiles are easier to describe for parents when we talk about like I remember always bringing the kids to the doctors and they would say, oh, your child's in the 80th percentile, right? So you kind of knew it was above what the average growth was for a child. So we've been used to using the percentiles for a while. And now they've brought back the criterion reference, and this is how we're doing against schools and districts that are like us. So they put together the criterion reference for us to move forward to see how our schools are actually performing based on the targets that DESI has actually put out for us in our schools. So those are the two pieces of accountability we're going to look at today. So just a little bit of history. So prior to this accountability system, we used to have the levels. It was level 1 school, level 2 school. We used to have the CPI, which was the composite index out of 100. So now we're moving into this accountability piece with the criterion reference. So in 2019 was the first time we actually had the criterion reference results for accountability, and then welcome COVID. So in 2020, because you need 2 years of data in order to do criterion reference. So in 2020, there's no MCAS. 2021, there's no accountability because they don't have 2 years in a row to actually compare it to. In 2022, which was last year, they came back with the accountability percentile that we went over when I did this last year at this time. And then in 2023, because they have the 2 years worth of data, they're able to go back to the criterion reference accountability system. Bear with me so far. So that's a little bit of the history of prior to 2018, 19, because they needed the 2 years. We had the old system, and now this is the new system. Went away for a little while, came back again. So when you have your normative indicators, you are showing how the group's standing as compared to other schools and groups serving comparable grade spans. So we'll be talking a little bit about the normative. I think that's a little bit easier for people to understand. And then what you find with the percentiles is that there's 3 different groups. You can either have schools serving only K through 8, schools that have a combination of K through 8 and 9 through 12, that would be Chelmsford, and then schools only having a 9 through 12 school. So we fall right smack in the middle. So in looking at the accountability for percentiles for the schools, you'll see that most of our schools are, above that 50%, about that 50 point, so they're making better progress. If you take just even Chelmsford High School, you would be able to say that the Chelmsford High School proficiency performance was higher than 81% of like schools. So schools that have approximately the same amount of students, same makeup of students, whether that's high needs, special needs, ELL, so that's what we're used to. And that's how you would look at your percentiles for all of our schools. So this is just a quick snapshot of what all of our schools look like for percentiles. Although I know that one of the schools is a little bit lower than the others, they were lower last year and they've made significant progress. So this is actually a good score that you see up there right now.
Can I ask you, are we able to determine what the like schools are from the reporting?
We will, so once,
Okay.
they haven't produced the DART districts yet for 2023, so we only have 2022s. My sense is some of the 2022s will be the 2023s. Once we have that, we'll be able to tell you what the DART districts are. And that's what Jay uses to put the budget together when
Oh,
we start.
so it's those, those
Yep,
columns?
those would be the comparable schools,
Okay,
right? So,
They change a little bit each year. The bulk of them will probably be the same, but there's always a couple that come and a couple that go. So as soon as we get those, I'll use that to do the analysis that we
Okay.
put in the budget book.
so those comparable schools include the composition of the student body by the breakdown of, you know, the particular groups?
Similar demographics.
Similar demographics, okay,
small
thank you.
demographics. And then we get into criterion reference, and there's multiple components with criterion reference. So for all of our 3 through grade 10 students that are actually taking the MCAS, ELA and math, it's part of their average scaled score. So that score of up to 560 that they can receive. In science, it's only grades 5, 8, 9, and 10, because our 9th graders take the biology test if they're in the honors program in 9th grade. And then everybody has student growth in ELA and math only. There's no student growth in science. Chronic absenteeism, L proficiency, and then the high school has 2 additional criterias, which is high school completion and advanced coursework completion. So the other schools do not have that, 3 through 8. So those are the parameters that they're using for criterion reference. So what ends up happening with DESE is that if you have, they will only give you data if the student group, meaning the subgroup, has 20 or more students in it. So when you look at this chart here for, they call it non-high school, which is really grades 3 through 8, you'll see that after they look at those targets and see how we've actually done, this is how it's weighted. So achievement has the most weight at 60%. If it's for all students, 20% for growth, 10% for English proficiency, and then additional indicators. And the additional indicators for grades 3 through 8 is only chronic absenteeism. What you see on the other side is for the lowest performing students, those are the students that lower 25% that you always want to see how they're doing. You'll notice that the percentages change, and it's because they're going to meet up to 100%. We don't have 20 or more L students in the lowest performing section of MCAS at this point. So that is why there's no number there. Had there been, they would have taken the 10% and evened it out similar to what you see on the other side for all students. So they changed the weighting for the lowest performing students, but you have to have enough students for them to have data for. So we could have 19 students, they just didn't give us the data for it. Does that make sense? And then for high school, you'll see, obviously for lowest performing students, we don't have any in those categories, right, that are lower performing students, so they're all at 0%. So they take the high school and they give the majority of the percentage to achievement, same thing, student growth. They add a percentage for high school completion, and then additional indicators. They have the chronic absenteeism like everyone else, but they also have advanced coursework completion. So that's how we end up getting the criterion reference. This is Chelmsford. Other districts, they could have different percentages based on their population. And then, from there, they give you a scaled point system, and that's based on the targets. And you have an additional piece of paper with you that you'll be able to look. It would have been too much to put these all in slides. So if you take a look just at this little packet that I gave you, and for this presentation specifically, it's all students, all right? So you have the other subgroups underneath. But this is how they're coming up with their point system. It's not that if you see a 0, it doesn't mean we didn't do anything. It's because we may have declined for our target. So what happens is DESE took, so we're usually, most of us are recovery path. So what recovery path means is we scored higher in 2019 than we did in 2022. So every school district that scored lower for MCAS in 2022 is on a recovery path. We want to get back to our levels of 2019. And then if it's path forward, that means that we scored higher in 2022 than we did in 2019. But for the majority of Chelmsford, we're in the recovery path. It's not huge, but we are still on a recovery path. So what they did is they took the achievement of 2022, 2023, looked at the change, and then developed a target for us. And if we met that target, we received specific points for it. So if you just even look at the first one on that sheet in front of you, all students, English language arts, MCAS, average composite scaled score, you'll see that our achievement in 2022 was 502.2. We received a 501.8, so that means the average score that students were getting, which is meets the standards, which is good, was 0.4 lower than it was last year. But because they set a target for us to go to 504.6, we didn't meet, we declined. But we declined by 0.4 of a point, of a percentage, so we only received 1 point for it. So I just don't want people to look at this scale point almost like they do for grades. It doesn't mean like A, B, C, D, you get an F, you didn't do anything. It just means that we didn't mean it. So if you look at even just the subgroups, and as you go into math, we don't have a very significant change. It just means we didn't either go forward or we went back just a little bit, but it's only by, the highest one on the first one is 1.3. Is this making a little bit more sense? So we just, the scores that you get there, those points, are based on the targets. Did we meet our target? Did we exceed our target? Or did we stay the same, is where you want to basically look. So when that's all done, they take the 3 through 8 scores and they take 70%, it weighs 70%, and then the high school points weigh 30% for a total of 100%, and they decide how much progress you're making towards meeting your targets. So all of this math behind it, which is a little confusing, right? It takes a little while to get through it. What it all means collectively is that we're making substantial progress towards our targets. We're making 55% progress towards our target. Doesn't mean we're at 55%, we're just making 55% progress. So that gives us a little bit of information and also see if there's any subgroups that are jumping out at us. It also means that we don't require any assistance from the state. So in other words, the state's not gonna come in and say, you must take your money and target it this way. We are gonna carry on the way Chelmsford carries on and move our monies from grants, our operating budget, to run the schools the way we see fit and target that money where we think it needs to go to. So if it's elementary, we would move it to elementary. If we feel like it's middle school, it goes to middle school. If it's mathematics specific, we move it to mathematics. So the state's not gonna come in and say, you must use your monies a certain way.
Okay, so just so I understand this. We look at 22 and 23, and then we calculate the change.
Yep.
And then that change and our target determines what percentage we're at for making substantial progress towards our targets.
Correct.
Okay.
That was good. That was an excellent summary.
How do the targets get determined based on just a certain expected growth based on what your scores
Yeah.
have been?
Yeah, so before they used to do it by like schools, but what they're doing is seeing how you perform. So DESE comes up with the targets. So they're looking at our performance between these 2 years and deciding that and they look at past performance, and they were like, if you continue this way, you should be meeting the target at 504.6, right? So they're taking an estimate, an estimate based on the math that they see, and that's how they determine the target.
So the target's not necessarily going to rise year after year. It's also going to look at how actual students did.
Correct.
And what's realistic based on your actual performance each year, each 2 years?
Correct.
Okay.
But we assume that they're going to move the target number up.
We assume that they're gonna move it, because what they would like us to do is get back to what we were in 2019. So since we are on the recovery path, the goal is to get us to 2019 at least, and so they give you X amount of years to get to that point. So we're probably 3 years out from that. Because last year and this year, 2023, 2022 were the first time MCAS was like the way most MCAS was taken, right? 2021 wouldn't have factored in because it was a completely different test. They only took one session of everything. Science wasn't part of the process for some of the students in the high school level. So last year and this year were 2 years ago and last spring were the 2 years that they were able to make this comparison to see how we're going to do it. So as we get more and more data, there'll be a little bit more trend data for them to make decisions. A lot of math that goes on in the background. Everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So this is that overall graph that you're going to see. If you go to the accountability page for Chelmsford, this is what you would see for the district. Now, there's one of these for every single school. So if you would like to go onto that page, or if you'd like me to pull it for you, that's fine. But it will give you the criterion reference for all the schools and how they are doing. This is just the one for Chelmsford Public Schools, district-wide, grades 3 through 10.
Now, why don't we get any credit for advanced coursework?
Great question. So it's not because we didn't get credit, it's not because we didn't have advanced coursework. It's, if you look at the target for the high school under advanced coursework, which was, I did these back to back, I didn't want to waste a lot of paper. Advanced coursework is on the second to last page. It's because of the target. So in 2022, we had 73.9%. And then in 2023, we had 71.5%, which was a 2.5% change. They had issued us a target of 77.3. So we missed the target, you receive no points. So what you have to do is really look at what the change was. Like, when are we sounding the alarm? What's the standard deviation to worry about this? It really would probably be at 13, 15% for us to be like, something's very, very wrong. 2.4% is not the something horrible's happening, we have to do a complete, goal towards it and fix that. That is just a very small change in the grand scheme of it.
So they expect 77.3% of our students to be taking advanced course.
Correct.
Okay.
So, question on this advanced coursework. We seem to be moving as a school district more and more towards the high school courses instead of the college courses versus doing the APs. What is that? How does that factor in here?
So the dual enrollment, the Project Lead the Way, and the APs are all considered advanced coursework
Okay,
in the eyes of the state.
all right.
So we're just trying to, as we open up more of these pathways too, I mean, you just heard about, the possibility of some other options for our students. It will allow more and more students to actually access advanced coursework that's not your typical advanced coursework. So it's a good thing we have them, we just want more students to take it.
Yes.
So in 2022, 73.9% of our students took advanced coursework.
Correct.
In '23, 71.5%.
Correct.
They want our target to be 77.3, so we get no points at all because
We declined.
You wouldn't have gotten points either, even if you went from
Well,
73.9
what's the end? You have to look at the end, right?
76.
Like,
I know.
Yeah, no, I get it now.
you look at the end, and how many students is that? Did like 3 less students take advanced coursework? That is not something that you say, we have to put in a complete program for this. We have to try and find kids. If all of a sudden that 662 students went down to 400 students, yes, what happened? Like, why are the students not wanting to take advanced coursework? But 662 students taking the advanced coursework, which is typically your juniors and seniors. So, you have a few freshmen here, sophomores there, but it's your juniors and seniors. So a good chunk of them are taking the advanced coursework.
So this is for all students. Does this include these target groups?
Well, that's
All students?
So all students is take all of the students at the high school level. And then if this underneath is all the subgroups. So how many of the all students were high needs? How many were low income? How many were L? How many were students with disabilities? Now, you might not receive any data on it, because if it's, well, it's interesting. This is the other little nuance that we found too, is that they tell us that they're not gonna give us any data if there's not 20 or more students, but we've found some spots, and we have some emails into the state where we had 20 or more students and they didn't give us any data. That's problematic for us, right? Especially with subgroups, because subgroups are usually, could be a marginalized group.
Right.
And if they're a marginalized group, but there's over 20 of them, we'd want to know if that would be something. I'd say, how do we move some of these students into taking advanced coursework? What's the barriers that are precluding them from taking the advanced coursework? Because I can see it right here on this one. I mean, if you have the L students, there's 24, we should have received data. How many of them took it?
I understand what you're saying, okay, and, but I think the state is assuming that students, that there is a barrier for or there's a barrier that prevents students from taking these courses, as opposed to a choice. What if students just choose not to take advanced classes?
That's true. We have some students that don't want to do that. We have some students that would belong in higher classes and they don't want to do it. I've seen students not do it because they want to up their GPA. There's a lot of different factors that go into advanced coursework and making those choices. Some of them take it more for if they're more of a humanities student or if they're more of a STEM student. So again, the 2.4% change is not alarming.
No, and I completely agree with you. I think my frustration lies, with this particular metric on the state side, in terms of, I feel frustrated a little bit about that. Because, I mean, I know we have our dual enrollment and we have our pathways programs, but, we're seeing more and more kids are opting for a different type of high school experience that may get them employment after high school versus more education. And so they may not take these advanced classes because it's not going to necessarily serve them, after, some of them, not all of them, but some of them may decide not to, because it's not going to serve any purpose after high school for what their plans may be.
Yeah, I think the pathways are probably more poignant for that, because those usually get them a certificate in something, right?
So that will count as our
Correct,
advanced.
so that would
Okay,
be
all right.
advanced coursework,
All right, I feel a little bit
right?
better
So
about
I know
that.
what you're saying. There are some students that don't even want to do the pathways. They just want to, do traditional school, or maybe they already have a plan. There may be a family business. You don't know. There's a lot of different factors. But with the opposed to just being a dual enrollment class or an AP class, a pathway class could get them a certificate in something to gain employment as soon as you leave high school, not necessarily go to college.
Yeah, yes, I get it.
Yep.
Yeah. I just want to be mindful of the fact that not
No.
everybody chooses the same
I
path.
think it's just that it gets confusing. If you don't know the math behind this and what we're talking about tonight, you look at that, you open up, I'm moving to Chelmsford Public Schools. This is great. I love Chelmsford, right? You open it up and you see that and you're like, oh, 0. Oh, they don't have any advanced coursework. It's a very difficult concept, I think, if you are not doing this every single day. The sheet that I gave you that's in the packet, I think is much more helpful as a school person to be like, okay, do we see any major things here? Like, what do we want to target? How do we want to move kids forward? What's important out of these different criteria? I don't have a problem with the criteria. I think the point system makes it a little bit difficult if you're not doing it every
This is very helpful.
That's helpful to me, at least. I mean, unless somebody can tell me something different. That makes it confusing, I think, because as soon as you see 0, everybody goes to, okay, 4 is the 100, 3 is the 80, right? You have to categorize this. That makes it a little bit difficult. What that's supposed to be telling us is how much progress are we making towards increasing the targets, which I think we should increase. It's great. I don't have any issues with that, but it's very difficult, I think, for just the average person to look at that and understand what that means.
So I have another question. Clearly, if a school, and we're not in this category, but if a school isn't achieving the levels that they're expected to in English, language arts, and math, and growth in those areas, there's going to be action taken by the state to help correct that.
Yes, it's depending on if you're in the
Where you
bottom
are.
20%.
Right.
Yeah.
But in terms of something like advanced coursework, which is a wonderful goal, is there a requirement that you have a certain number of students actually doing that?
Yes, they gave us a target of what percentage of our students should be taking advanced courses.
Right, and
7.
So there is an expectation.
So they actually expect, and if we
Yes.
stay below that, what kind of action gets taken for
I
something
don't,
like that?
there won't be, most likely there won't be action on like a Chelmsford, because we're offering it, right? It's mostly for schools that are not offering it, and not taking advantage of, there's a lot of, like, we have the pathway grants, taking advantage of the money that the state's putting in. There's the early college process through DESE, right? So I think the action would be is if you're not taking any action to put in these courses, not,
I was just curious,
Yeah,
like,
if you go down
where-
by another, percentage, we're coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing fine with it because we're offering all that, so I just wondered
Yeah, I mean, in a
state-wise
perfect world,
what
I'd
they
love
want.
every child to be able to have take an advanced course, whatever that means, right? Whether it's through a pathway, through an AP class, whatever it is, we want to make sure that they all have access to advanced work.
Yeah, I think one of the important things this points out to us is as we go forward this year, and as we're targeting our achievement in our academics as our biggest target, to just make sure those accesses are truly there and that we start them early enough. And one of the things that I've always wondered, I think we do really well in terms of distinguishing in the 7th, 8th grade level on mathematics. I'm not so sure we do that as well in the EL in terms of making sure that the student already understands about advanced placement and how well they can do. So we lose a little bit of initiative on some of those really high performing students who are incredible
Trying to
readers
access the
and so
language.
on, just to make sure they really remain motivated as they transition into the high school. And maybe look at that as an incentive to make sure that, we're offering that early enough. I've,
And encouraging.
absolutely, because there are this is one question I often get, and I don't know if others in the committee do, but, my kid's really great at reading and writing and so on, and then it gets to that 7th and 8th grade, and it's not really distinguished as well as my kid's really great at mathematics, because we don't have that placement at that level. So I think it's something to think about in encouraging this moving forward. I am glad to see that it's all advanced work.
Yes.
That's really good. And then in terms of the selection for coursework at college level, just looking at that program to see if enough of our folks are really choosing it and whether there's a benefit. So as a parent, I paid some of that money to do some of that coursework and so on, right? None of them were taken by the schools that my girls went to. I don't know if there's a way to incentivize that more. Can we make sure a certain number of schools do accept it? What is it that we can do
I'll
so
have
that
to
more
get the
people
list
take
of
it?
accepting, that's actually surprising to me, because I've only heard of a couple of the private schools not taking it. I mean,
Right.
obviously the UMass system has to take it, but
Right.
I'm curious what,
The private schools.
why some of those, I know what schools your children went to, so, in my head, I'm like, why wouldn't they have taken it? Because we've been told different. So I can try and get that list too.
Yeah, just to make sure.
And the schools make the kids jump through hoops,
Yes.
if they take the dual enrollment. I know I have quite a few kids.
Well, it's a money maker, so we
Right,
don't
so-
have, we don't have the authority on their side to take or not take, that's up to higher ed. But it's a money issue, right?
Yes.
Because they lose money if you don't take courses.
So they make it tough for the kids to get that credit. They can get it, but you have to fight for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We ready to move on?
Yes.
So, like I said earlier, so these are the proficiency levels for all ELA, math, and science in grades 5 and 8 only. We'll get to the little bit of the complicated part, and I think this is what one of our student reps was referring to when she was looking at her MCAS information on Aspen. So this is what where we expect. We, obviously, 500 and above is, where we'd like to be, and our average is, for our different grade levels is over 500, so that's good, right? So the average for the district. Where it gets a little complicated is for grades 9 and 10. for if they're taking science, and obviously grade 10 for the ELA and the math, or any new students that come to us. So there's a couple of things. Obviously, if you may pass the test even if you're not meeting expectations, but if you are in that section where it's the 455 in ELA all the way to 471, you've passed the MCAS, which means you don't have to retake it, but you have to go on an educational proficiency plan, and that's developed by the school and followed by the teachers. And if the students pass the coursework and the proficiency plan, they'll be issued a diploma from Chelmsford High School. This is the same for mathematics. It's that 1 point of the 469. If they get that, they're still not meeting expectations, but they have passed the MCAS enough to receive a high school diploma and require an EPP if they take that. The difference is in science. Last year, and I if you did print out your stuff, I had to make a little change because I forgot. Last year, they allowed the students to have an EPP in science. That's because that was the class of 2023, the last class that if they even took the MCAS, they didn't have to take it, but if they took it, they could go on an EPP. There is no educational proficiency plan for science. So that is why even at that lower quadrant of not meeting expectations, they're still passing the MCAS in order to graduate. Just means they do not need to retake it. So they're a little off.
So when we look at our results for this year, how many of our students fall into that EPP category in EL and in mathematics?
They're still polling the students right now. We just received our information like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So they've already pulled who they have to work on that, and they've already created them. Like, I can get you that number, though.
Okay,
It's typically not a lot at the high school.
right,
That's a good
but
news.
just,
But I can get you the actual numbers.
thank you.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Okay. So with that being said, just looking at overall performance for ELA, this just gives you an idea of what it looks like in the past 5 years. So our proficiency rating is at 58%, which is 1 point different from last year. So the basic takeaway from all of this is our actual scores are flat. We didn't make much change from last year to this year. But one of the things I want to point out is that even though we have exceeds and meets the standards, partially meeting, the top part of partially meeting, and you saw that in the high school, is actually, doesn't mean you failed the MCAS. It just means that you are partially meeting the standard. Doesn't mean it's like failing. I don't want people to think the gray and the red is failing. It's actually the first part of partially meeting between those ranges that I showed you on that previous slide is passing MCAS. We have people that partially meet a standard. It doesn't mean that they are not able to graduate from high school or really can't continue on in their educational journey in grades 11 and 12. They just would need a little bit more support if they were struggling in any of those courses. So this is the overall performance for ELA. Two other things to note on here is that, like I said, that average scaled score for the entire district in ELA is at the meets standards. And SGP is 52.3, so that means that we are meeting at least 1 year's worth of growth for the district. Same for mathematics, you'll see that 53% are meeting, and it's flat again from last year. We're like almost dead on if you look at just the two graphs there, and that the average scale score is 503. And the SGB for the district is 53, so 50 is 1 year's worth of growth. So as overall as a district, we've made 1 year's worth of growth for our students. That part on the side there with the dots, that just kind of gives you a little matrix of like where the schools fall. You can see they're all clustered together, so they're all around the same amount. And then for science, there is no growth, so 59% increase. Actually, it's a little bit of a decrease this year by 3%. And I was talking to John Morris, and I'm like, wait a minute, if I remember this, and I was correct, the students that took the MCAS last year for science were majority the honors kids in grade 9. So this is what it would look like with the grade 9 and grade 10 students that are not taking honors biology. So there's where the difference probably came into play. We knew this last year because we were like, well, what happens when all the honors kids take something? What does it look like in the prior year? So it was a 3% decrease. but their average scale score is a 505, and there is no SGP in science because there's no 2 years worth of information to do that. And then overall performance by schools, right? This gives you an idea of how the schools have been performing. And that dotted line in the middle is just showing you where the state average is. And giving you an idea of what it's been looking like over the past 5 years. Remembering that in 2020, there was no MCAS to take. Same for mathematics, gives you an idea of where our students are at each of the schools.
Bless you.
So that, bless you, that overall that you see, how does that overall get broken down? This is the stuff I think that makes a lot more sense for people beyond criterion, reference, accountability. This is the information that's very helpful for us. And then same for science, if you remember, there is one school in here, you'll see that, I cannot get it out of the system, I don't know why, but it didn't affect us. It's one of, I think it's one of our special ed schools that we send students, there was 5 students that took it. It won't significantly change anything, but I just could not pull it out of the system for some reason. So that's not one of our schools that gives science, it's only at the 2 middle schools, which will be different. It's gonna still be only grade 5 at one and grade 8 at the other. It'll be interesting how they do that. And then this is the SGP, what it looks like at each of the schools. So where that growth comes from. And how that 52.3 came about. Same for, did that switch over to math? Oops, I didn't do my math one, sorry. Did I miss the math one? Is there missing? You know what I think I did is when I made the change, I may have pulled out the math, so I might have to add the math one back in. So we stop at ELA, we'll have to put math back in there, but same thing, it would give you the SGP of how we did in mathematics. And growth, I mean, I know the state gives more percentage towards performance, but I give it towards growth, because if you're already behind and it's an end of the year standard and you're a year behind, if you've made at least a year's growth, you're trying to get there. You want some stretch growth to go even further, but performance is literally performance, expecting everybody to be at the end of the grade level that they are with their standards. What about the person that's just trying to make that improvement? So when I see growth like that, to me, that weighs more than performance. So that's the end of all of this. Oh, there's the math one. Okay, sorry. I thought it disappeared, that's all. Gives you an idea of how they've done in math. Nobody had SGP in 2021 because we didn't have 2 years worth of data. And then how we end with questions. I'm sure there's lots of them.
I look at, our scores, and then you look at, compared to the state, we seem to be about 10 to 15% above the state average in proficiency, SGP, all that type of stuff, so.
And the state did say that across the board, like all of the data is flat. There wasn't like huge gains. I think one of the things that helped us is right out of the gate, even with COVID, we were still holding our own, right? Where some districts really tumbled down, we were always holding our own. So am I surprised that we're a little flat? No. Are we still putting the resources where they need to go? Yes. That's really what it comes down to is, okay, you have this information, what are you gonna do with it? Like, where is that money going to go? How are we gonna get, like, interventionists, people that are in there to support these kids? After-school help, right? How are we gonna, like our L students, we have the after-school help for them, right? So that they can come and they can work with the L teachers. We hire our own people, even products, anything we can, but we always make it an entire goal in how we're gonna use that money. And it's also looking at the data, so we have like things in place, like now I actually noticed, I'm so lucky, all of the goals for evaluation come into my email. It's such a good day when, my email's full of it, but when you start to look at some of the goals, people are starting to write in goals like, oh, I want to use Panorama for data to benchmark my kids. It's getting the information in front of the teachers easily so that they can say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't realize there was a problem here. Because when the data's scattered, it's hard. They're trying to teach, they're trying to do stuff. They don't have time to look up 15 things. So bringing it into one place, so they're making goals around how to use data to inform their decisions.
Did you say that was Teach Point goals?
Teach Point, yeah.
Okay.
Lots of them.
Do we, do we have common planning time or professional learning communities that allow teachers to sit down with this data and come up with a plan based on subject or grade level or
They
whatever?
do, and they have department meeting time, that they use that, and they can use it during PD time if it's something that's gonna, give them some type of professional development to create a lesson plan that's needed, but they do have time together.
And I agree with you, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, we do have a lot of teachers that actually do team goals too. So they're working with their partners or colleagues in the same areas to work on goals together.
Yep. And we have a bank of goals too to help them, because sometimes it's just hard to think like, this is what I want to do. And it's like, oh, is this what you would like to do? And they're like, oh, thank you. So they have a way to be able to do it and then action steps. So we have a lot of bank of information for them to use.
And then my other question was, I know that we have a lot of things in place. How are we determining how effective these things in place that we are? Do you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, we've seen, a couple years where it's been kind of flat. At what point do we evaluate, okay, here are the things that we're using to try and boost these scores up. It's not working. We need to try something else.
That's what we would do. We'd use the data that we have. So like even like for, say, intervention and stuff, we have clear entrance and exit criteria.
Okay.
That has to be used, right? So if the students are not making progress, they have to stay a little bit longer. If they're making progress, bring them back in, another group might be coming in. I think one of the,
Well, actually, I meant not the student, but the intervention that we're using.
oh,
How do we determine,
We
like, at
would
what
use-
point do we say, okay, this particular intervention is not working, we need to try something else? Because we've had a couple years of it being flat.
Yep.
When do we say, okay, well, this particular tool has not been effective, when do we try something else?
I can give you a specific example. So like we had the paper tool that we use for the tutoring.
Right.
It was great. A lot of people were using it, but then if you looked at the data use, like real use, opposed to what, it just was not, it was not what we needed for that kind of money, right? So we needed to say, okay, we're gonna collapse that, let's try something different. So that's when we do it. We look at what's the usage, how are the students performing? If it's not working, do we try something different? One of the only barriers that we run into, like, so for interventionists, that's people coming in to
Right.
teach. Typically, we do pretty well, but then it gets a little more difficult to find people. It's not the money, we have the money, it's getting the people to actually come and be the interventionist, right? And I think once we get into like the upper middle school level, when you get to math specifically, you need someone that has skill in math. So we do rely heavily on, former teachers, people that are maybe taking some time off to be home with their kids, but only want to come in for a few hours each week. So that's where it gets a little bit more difficult, I think, is getting the actual bodies hired that are qualified to work with the students. And then we always struggle with scheduling, right? We've made some changes at the grade 5-6 scheduling to build in the time during the ELA class, not pull the kid from another specialist, because that's not helpful to students either. Who wants to do school all day when you're struggling with school? So we're trying different ways with the schedule to embed them in. And we'll see how that works, and if we don't see success with that, we'll try a different strategy.
Thank you. Did anybody else have a question, Maria? Susan? John, any questions? All set? No. Well, thank you very much. This was very comprehensive and overwhelming.
I think if you can get past the criterion.
No, I
piece and
agree.
you can go
I
with this,
agree.
I think this makes more sense than trying to come up with some percentage of how well you're doing towards the targets. You can tell. And which targets are the most, important and where we want to spend some time on.
I think the only thing I want to say about that, Linda, is I think the only thing that concerns me, I'm not even sure it's a valid concern, in that I worry about the amount of pressure on students. As we're trying to raise, our target, raise our numbers to, meet that target, what is the cost, for kids' social emotional learning,
Yeah.
I don't know that there is one, but I think I am mindful.
Yep.
I know that kids do stress out about MCAS. I know that there is a big push, obviously to try and raise these scores, and I just don't want it to come at the expense of, kids' emotional well-being.
Oh, I don't disagree. I think one of the bigger things that's, we're gonna see a difference is kids are coming to school more. right? There was a time where I was like, where are the children? Like, why is there so much absenteeism? And then even with COVID, that was forcing them to stay out of school. I think we're seeing a little bit more of like, I just need a day, I'm not feeling so well, opposed to, okay, now you're out for 10 days. The actual absenteeism was an issue, especially at the high school level. Right, these kids they were used to being at home. So hopefully when they get into school, because that's part of the stress. If you're not there and you're not learning and then suddenly you're supposed to produce, that's the stress, and then that just turns into a bad cycle, and then you just stop coming to school or stop trying. So hopefully as we get kids into school more regularly, there's no stopping, we'll probably start to see a little bit less of that stress.
I also wonder what the impact is of colleges not requiring SAT scores on students really working to perform well on these standardized type of tests, because this is a standardized type of test. And what does that mean? Does that mean that, the incentive is not there to really want to do well on these tests as well? Because what's the payoff in the end? Are we going to take it away from being required for graduation? Then if we are, there's another incentive gone. So when you take away some of those things, then there's not as much pressure.
Right.
My other question is, what's the impact on a teacher? So when MCAS originally came out and so on, people were always saying, well, this is not really about the student and how well the student is doing, but how well the teacher is doing on teaching the material. So for our staff, what's the impact of what we've got here? And is that part of their evaluation? What happens? What is MCAS?
No, it used to, remember, DESE originally had it as part of the evaluation process, and that was like a needle that went right off the record. When, people knew it was coming, and then all of a sudden, when it was there, it was like, what? What is this thing? So that turned into, that was like, statewide, that was crazy. No, there is a teacher report, we give it to the teachers so they know how their class did based on growth, right? And teachers want that. That's how they look at it and assess, like, okay, why is it that this class grew more than this one? And that's how they develop their goals. So, but it's not used to be like, okay, you didn't get this percentage, we'll see you after school, right? You have to go do extra PD. But if there was somebody who was like, I don't know what's going on, we'd have them connect with other colleagues to see what's happening. But there's no punitive effect to a teacher.
Right, thank you.
But it is stressful.
Oh, I'm
You
sure
want
it
your
is.
kids to do well.
100%.
We all want them, you
Absolutely.
want that.
Absolutely.
It's a self-inflicted stress because
Yes.
you want to be like, oh my God, look at how great you did. You want to give them all hugs.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I'm not going to disagree that, I think we, our teachers hold themselves to a very high standard and they want to achieve. But yes, it is stressful.
I think it's also really important that we kind of look for trends over a number of years, because in a teacher, your students from year to year, they're not the exact same students. Who you get the next year is a different makeup in your class, and you may be the best teacher in your school, but you have different kids each year. And the same thing as you look through, and I was glad to see it wasn't always the same, which elementary school was better on math and then ELA and this, and there was a shift. But any given year, there's different students in the school. So you have to be able to take those few years and look at the aggregate of all of that and not say, oh, this year,
We need
this
3 to
school
5
didn't do
years
well. Yeah.
to do that. You can't, because there's an anomaly with the math at the high school level. It was like, what? What do you mean 33.3% growth? That's ridiculous. And it rectified the following year. So what happened? I don't, if it's just one anomaly, that's fine. But if it's over and over and over again, then you really have to take a look at it.
Yeah, I think you really have to be able to look, as you said, 3 years or
Yeah, it's just almost
more.
like a governing
Each
thing
year,
of
you
how we
can't
doing.
just look.
Right, and that's why the student growth percentage is so important and why I think we focus more on that.
Yes, that to me, because some kids are already a year or two behind, right? No fault of them. Circumstances may have come from someplace else. So I want to see if they're getting better as they go along.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. This is a lot of work, I know, and we appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
I love the math around it, it's fine.
Next up on the agenda, just for your sake, the presentation schedule for the year I put together with the schools. We talked about this at the last meeting. And I also kind of earmarked a different school committee meeting for each of the strategic plan steering committees to present on their topics. And I had to do this and kind of take a look at like when things would make sense. Obviously, we're kind of doing our academic review now, so it would make sense to do the academic first. Operations and equity were kind of the two next neck and neck, but we actually do all of our capital planning in November, so I thought it really made more sense to have the November meeting be on the operations and finance, because that ties into the town's capital plan. And then we'll do equity in December, SEL in January when we come back from the holidays, and then human capital in February. The only other thing, and you'll see the other schools earmarked for their presentations, the only other things that we're going to do a little differently this year is in November. We're going to ask both middle schools to come in together, both principals, Parks and Blag, because we did the whole realignment of the middle schools, and there's probably going to be some common questions about the two schools and how their years have gotten off to start. So for this year, I'm going to ask the two of them to come together to the November meeting and talk a little bit about how the opening of school has gone and how they're adjusting to the new realignment, the new grade level configuration. So they'll come together in November. But I just wanted to share this with you, and we'll get these queued up for the future meetings. But this was the schedule we came up with.
Any questions? Great, thank you.
Did you have a question?
I'm sorry, did you?
I am gonna say this, okay. I went through this, and I think that this is excellent, all right, and very pertinent. And what we missed that we got from prior presentations and so on would be focusing on specific departments. So for example, when I see all of this here, I'm probably not gonna get much this year on specialists and what happens in the special areas of education here, which might be just fine for this particular year. But if there's something that's needed throughout the year, and we're getting, a lot of questions or comments or whatever, is it something we're able to add in, a presentation, a report, whatever?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if there is something that comes up, we certainly can do that. The other thing that we have asked the schools to do, primarily the elementary and the middle schools, is if they're doing a special project with a department,
Okay.
and they want to kind of highlight something that's taking place at their particular school with, whether it's a performing arts department or a health department or something like that, they may come and kind of do a little co-presentation with the principal. But if there's something that comes up that we feel we're missing, we certainly can. I just wanted to kind of give this as the shell, because the different departments also are going to come in under the strategic plan areas, so they'll be able to talk about how
okay.
the work in their departments are kind of informing some of the work under the priorities.
All
But if
right,
there's something missing, we certainly can add. But I thought this just kind of gave us a good starting point for the year. But let me
That
know
makes
if
sense.
there's something that jumps out to you as the year goes on, just let me know. We can always try to add it in.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Next item is the MASC, this is the November Joint Conference with Mass. These are the resolutions. I gave them to you at the last school committee meeting. So we really need to go through and decide the school committee's decision on whether either to support or not support, and then select a delegate and a backup delegate for the November meeting.
So why don't we start with the resolutions, and then we can determine who the delegate and backup delegate will be for the conference. So I know everybody's had a chance to look at the resolution, so rather than having Dennis read all of them, I was going to have him read just the last part where it said that therefore be it resolved.
Right, so Resolution 1, full stable funding for Metco. Therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the governor and the legislature to create a stable funding structure to support Metco, its partner districts, and fully funds the supports provided by Metco and the cost of providing services delivered by Metco's partner districts.
Is there anybody have any questions or thoughts? Okay,
Metco's,
I'm sorry?
you want to just explain what Metco is? People are listening?
Go ahead, Jay. That's why Mecco is, yes.
So my.
It's a good program.
Yeah, I
It is a good
have no involvement. I
Yeah,
haven't
right.
worked
I
in
know
a
we don't.
district that has worked with it before. But basically, it's an opportunity for typically like suburban school districts to be able to invite, almost like our school choice, to invite students from more urban centers into their schools. So it is a great opportunity in most cases for the students who are accepted into the district. Again, think of it kind of as a school choice. They become part of that district, and again, typically it's more urban centers sending students to suburban schools for opportunity and obviously to increase diversity among student populations.
So basically, the resolution is just asking for the legislature to support full funding for this.
Yes. And I was trying to figure out, because we always, I mean, this is not the first time this resolution has come before us, right? I was actually trying to figure out, I know that METCO was the Metropolitan Council for Educational Opportunity at one point, but I don't know what the initials stand for anymore.
That is correct.
All right, so, but yes, that is what it is. So, and I believe in the past, we have supported this resolution.
Right.
So, with regards to Resolution 1, all those in favor of supporting it?
Aye.
All right, 5-0 in
Okay, so
support.
these are not motions per se.
We don't make a motion for these now, or we just, we're saying, voting to support the resolution.
And it's, what you're looking for in the minutes.
I don't know, I mean,
No, I
as
think
long
it's
as you
just
have a
to
general
support.
sense of
Yeah.
whether you're
To
supporting it.
support the resolution, yeah.
And do you need me to include what he read, the last therefore?
No, we have all of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I just
You
need
could
to
just list
refer to the
resolution number 1,
resolution
number
number
2,
one,
and
what
just
it's
by
about,
title.
and then,
Right.
okay. So
And,
that was 5 of you all.
Right, and if you look at the memo that comes before this, it actually has the resolution and what the title is, if that will help you.
Yep, no, I'm looking at it right now. Thank you, I just didn't know how much you wanted in the minutes.
No problem.
All right, Resolution 2, regarding investigations and recommendations for transportation bidding procedures. Be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees prevail upon the Office of the State Auditor to investigate the bidding practices of school transportation providers, to present such findings and recommendations as may be necessary to contain costs and make more efficient transportation services available for public schools.
Yes.
Okay, Jay, you want to, this is,
Good luck to them.
Yeah.
There's
Is
just,
anybody-
yeah, there's just
yes.
not enough vendors, but,
right.
No, there isn't, right? I mean,
right.
I don't know what they can do, but I do agree that something has to be done, so, I guess it's.
Can't make people go into the business of
I know.
running buses, yeah.
There's nothing to vote against.
No, there really
We all
isn't.
agree
Right,
that
right.
what should be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, we'd love for it to happen.
Right.
I don't think the reality
Doesn't
is.
affect
I
the
think-
actual change.
I think when people so what I didn't realize when I first went to these is that all of this is non-binding. So then you go and then everybody's voting on a thing that they hope they can get
Correct.
yeah, you're
These
trying
are
to push it all the way
aspirations.
up.
Well, you're just asking the legislator to now do
Yeah.
it, and we can't make them do
Right.
it, but. it
Right.
needs-
Right, that's exactly right. There's nothing that, John hit the nail on the head, it's not binding. So
Yeah, it's-
We're just making the recommendation that this become a legislative priority, I think, moving forward for MASC.
And there's no downside to this one. I just don't think it's overly, in the end, like practical, but there's no downside in supporting it.
All right. Do you have a comment?
No, I'm just thinking the only way would be, the state starts funding subsidies and stuff for bus companies and that way more bus companies begin to exist and so on, but I don't know. This has no downfall. We need more competition.
Right. All right, so all those in favor of supporting this resolution?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Okay, Resolution 3, regional transportation. Be it resolved that in such cases where a pupil resides greater than 1.5 mile from the school of attendance measured by commonly traveled route, and the Commonwealth reimbursement does not fully cover the amounts expended for such transportation, the regional school district may allow pupils to opt out of such transportation or may charge a fee that its aggregate may not exceed the differential between the amounts expended for furnishing transportation and the Commonwealth's reimbursement. Be it further resolved that MASC encourages the legislation to modify Mass General Law Title 12, subsection, I don't even know how to read that, with the aforementioned proposed language, or alternatively, and remove the period provide regional districts the ability to, if so desired, to charge a transportation fee that in aggregate cannot exceed the differential between that and the Commonwealth reimbursement and the regional school district transportation expense for any pupil that resides greater than 1.5 miles from the school of attendance measured by a commonly traveled route. Pupils may opt out of transportation and not be subject to transportation fees.
Is there any discussion?
This one's on there all the time, too.
I know, it
It's
is.
just,
Every year.
the regional schools just don't get reimbursed at the 100% rate, so they want to charge fees now.
All right, Jay, is there anything else that you wanted to add to this particular one?
I don't, I'm not informed on this one. It has no impact to Chelmsford.
Right.
If it supports somehow your colleagues in another community, go for it. It's not going to have any impact on us.
Just as an aside, since the Mass Association of Superintendents is it's a co-sponsor for this conference, do you have to pass resolutions as well?
No. Well, we do in a different format.
Okay.
We have like a legislative committee that has a different like legislative platform and agenda.
Okay.
But we don't meet to actually have there be like a vote on them.
Okay.
We have a committee that decides and then puts a platform together for the organization.
All right, thank you. All right, so all those in favor of supporting this resolution?
Aye.
5-0.
All right, Resolution 4, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Be it resolved, the MASC recommends that all districts adopt the position of DEI coordinator to work towards an anti-racist school system.
Okay, any discussion?
Don't think we should be dictating what school districts hire.
And I think that there's also an assumption that there's, equal need across all districts. So,
I also know, because I know a lot about how this works at the town levels, and that towns who have appointed a DEI coordinator without other bodies in town also having enough background and training, it's been really hard to affect change and implement things. It needs to be a more broader base of people who understand DEI than having just one person who's now in charge of trying to make sure everyone else does it. I don't think that's the most effective way.
There are different
achieve.
approaches. Yeah, but our approach is, through professional development for our staff and our administration and, and trickle down
School committee.
effect. So, the school committee, yeah, and just
Yeah.
hoping to trickle it down to the students. So it's not like a one-size-fits-all where you hire a DEI coordinator that's gonna fix all your
Well,
problems.
and at town level, at many towns, it's proven not to be effective
Right.
when they simply try to hire a person in town to do it. So I don't really see how it would help a lot of schools to actually achieve the goal. So
Yeah, I also
I'm not
see
really in favor.
DEI as being one component of our social emotional learning, so, which we do have a coordinator for. And I know that our coordinator works a lot on DEI training and support throughout the district. I'm inclined to agree with both of you on this one.
No,
Maria,
if
you
we only had a
agree?
resolution that, there's more training for school committee members on DEI, that'd be great.
Well, I mean, not to pat
Right.
ourselves on the back, but I liked our resolution.
Yeah.
Because I believed it started with the top at school committees. It was nothing mandated, it was just something included in charting the course. But it also forced MASC to take a more active role in this, as opposed to pushing it down to the districts. And I feel like that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
So, all right, so with regards to Resolution 5, all those in favor?
We did.
I'm sorry, 4, looking at 5, sorry, Dennis, 4. All those in favor? Opposed? Aye.
Opposed.
5-0, and no one abstained.
0-5.
Zero.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you. I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. It's kind of hot in here.
Yes.
It is people.
It's 80 degrees outside, All right, Resolution 5, Mass School Building Authority. Be it resolved, the Massachusetts Associative School Committee call upon the Massachusetts Legislature to amend and Mass General Law 70B, Section 7, by removing the $800 million cap. Be it further resolved that the Massachusetts Associative School Committee calls upon the Massachusetts Massachusetts School Building Authority to reinstate the accelerated repair program for 2024. And be it further resolved, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts Legislature to allow public preschools to be included in the accelerated repair program and core program.
Okay, is there any discussion on this resolution? All right, So with regards to Resolution 5, all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Resolution 6 then?
Resolution 6, School Bus Stop Armed Surveillance Act and Enforcement and Penalties. Be it resolved, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts Legislature to enact legislation to pass into law the ability of cities and towns to install on all school buses live digital video detection monitoring systems for the purpose of enforcing violations against owners of motor vehicles who vehicles failed to stop for school bus when required to do so by law. Be it further resolved, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts Legislature to enact legislation raising the fine for passing a stopped school bus to a significant schedule of fines as penalty whether witnessed by a police officer or recorded by a digital video detection monitoring system.
Okay, is there any discussion on this one?
So they basically want to put cameras on the buses to catch people going by.
Good,
Yeah, no.
good. Yeah,
Yeah, there are, just as background on this one, there are buses that actually have cameras on those arms that come out. The issue is, under the law now, if it's just like a recorded video, the person can't be cited after the fact for that. A policeman or woman has to actually observe the violation and then stop the car and issue a ticket. This would basically just allow the video that's recorded on the bus to serve as evidence to have a citation be issued, even without the presence of a police officer. So that's the distinction on this one.
You could just look them up and say you're a jerk and like send them a card that tells them. For
But I don't
like,
think you can find them.
I'm just
You
saying.
can send anyone a card, but you can't.
But if you see the license plate, you know the address, like whoever was in this car on this date, you're a jerk.
Oh, can we do it for the red lights too? I'd like
I
to
know.
tag that on there.
Maybe just some
That's
good
the
old shaming
distinction.
will get us
It
out.
makes sense, makes sense.
okay. Let's see here. So with regards to Resolution 6, all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Resolution 7, related to MCAS, there be it resolved, that MASC urges Massachusetts to develop a wider, more consensus building strategy for an evaluation system with meaningful input from legitimate stakeholders. That MASC urges the state legislature to launch a comprehensive evaluation to investigate the extent of biases pertaining to MCAS testing and make these results public. That MASC urges Massachusetts to enact a moratorium on the MCAS testing effective immediately. MASC urges Massachusetts to develop an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS test.
Who submitted this? Framingham.
Is this the one that had the little paper in it that it was also? No, this wasn't.
So is there any discussion on Resolution 7?
Again, this one is,
Yeah.
and every year, it's not gonna.
It's not like
I
a
mean,
thing.
I know there is a thing gonna be at the ballot, probably on MCAS, but we talked about that last time, how it
There is a lot of discussion among all groups, kind of in the state around, is it time to take a look at MCAS and possibly like a revamp of the test or exactly what it's targeting to do. I think that's a good discussion to be had. I think that is a position also that the Superintendent Association supports. But not necessarily to just do away with it and not know what you're going to move to or use it in replacement. Because I think I mentioned previously also, like the moratorium on MCAS, it is also tied to a federal funding mechanism where districts are getting money. So it's not as easy as just saying, we're not gonna do MCAS, because you'd have to have something in replacement. Personally, I'm all for taking a look at the tests, are there different options, but you need to know what you're gonna go to before you just remove something. But this is an annual thing that's on the agenda.
I'm just gonna vote
Can I
no.
ask, how does this process work at it? Like, as an amendment, I could see if you have the first two, I'm perfectly in favor of. But then the second two, the moratorium, and then to immediately develop an alternative, I'm not in favor of. Is
that's
it
what-
all or
that-
nothing?
Well, then
What
you,
happened in the conference? No.
then you go to the conference and you go up to the microphone and then you pontificate for a while and you say, I want this amendment removed, and then everybody, rah, and it's a big rabble. And then eventually a choice is made, and then somebody will come up and like say, okay, no, we're good with the voting. That's how it works. It's a free-for-all.
Like it happens at town meeting.
Yeah.
Got it.
So for our purposes,
Oh,
our,
yeah, well, we have responsibility.
right, yeah, our delegate will represent our interests
Yeah.
in this particular, in that forum, like the conference.
So if you
And
want
there may be
calm-
a change.
If you want calm, you go with Donna. If you want rabble-rousing, you go with John. That's how it goes.
I think for us, though, we're voting on the entire thing.
Correct. Because there's no amendment before us right
Yeah.
now.
I'm just voting no.
So I'm
I
not,
agree. I
All right.
don't agree with it as it stands,
Right,
stated.
all those in favor? All those opposed?
Opposed.
0-5.
But that will happen, definitely will happen. People will pull that apart and probably into 4 little pieces.
And in the end, it just will
Yeah,
pass
and
because
then,
it's,
yeah, to pontificate a half hour each piece.
I could see people going with bullets 1 and 2. as
Yeah,
you
exactly.
indicated.
No, no,
It's
I-
really just the third one that's gonna be contentious.
Call to close, is that what it is, when you move to close?
Moved, I called, make a motion to
Move to-
move the question.
move the question, yeah. then-
But the only thing, Susan, I know that we've already voted on this, but, again, if you read the first 3 words, the MASC urges,
Yeah.
meaning,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if the legislature wants to take it up, if the Department of Education wants to take it up, great. But other than that.
Oh, sure, it's not an absolute
Right,
anyway, but
exactly.
I wouldn't urge them to do a moratorium, even if they were, not coming from me, or us.
And I don't like the MCAS, and I said,
It's
All
not
right.
perfect, but I don't think you just get rid of it just like that.
Resolution 8?
Yep, Resolution 8, safe storage of firearms. Be it resolved, the MASC recommends all districts to urge the superintendent and staff to create an appropriate communication to parents and guardians that explains the importance of secure firearm storage, protect children and teens from unauthorized access to unsecured firearms and illegal obligations consistent with Massachusetts safe storage law. Be it further resolved that MASC urges other communities to work with their local law enforcement agencies, health agencies, and nonprofit organizations to collaborate and increase efforts to inform district parents and guardians of their obligation regarding secure storage of firearms in their homes and vehicles.
I mean,
It's a good idea, but it's overstepping a little bit
It's a lot.
of the responsibility of the school committee.
Yeah, yes. 100%. Is this within?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I don't think it's a bad.
No, I don't,
No.
but I just.
But at the same time,
is it
it's like,
beyond
what
the
else
scope
is
of
gonna
our-
come that's really not school-based?
Right.
It's a
Rescue
law
you to send
enforcement
home
issue,
message
it's
about
a,
Firearm storage, I mean, it's,
right.
again, it's a little
What are you
outside
gonna
of
do,
our.
add a
I wouldn't mind, as a school district, working with the police department, if they wanted to
Yeah.
put something
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
I'm not sure it should necessarily, I don't think it's a bad thing, like you said, but
Yeah,
realistically speaking,
right.
Yeah, none of us are against gun safety.
Right,
But I
right.
just don't know if
right, no, I completely agree.
this is a
completely
resolution
agree.
that's.
It's Framingham again? I don't know if,
always framing hands.
I know,
Yeah.
but I don't know if something happened there to spur, like, action on their part,
Didn't they
but
just lose their superintendent? There are all kinds of,
know.
yes,
That
they
was
just had like a big, maybe that was Brockton. I don't know.
oh, that was Brockton.
okay.
But like I said, it's not a bad message. It's just odd where it would be coming from MASC to tell school committees and superintendents to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, I get it, I think these resolutions are well-intended, right? There's nothing wrong with giving that message, but I think, that it does have to be, come from the right place. Maybe to even the right people, in order to be able to get these messages out, so.
It could also be very interesting how each different superintendent puts it in a different way, and each different school committee puts this memo in a different way, and I just don't think that this is the way to go here.
Right, and it only says that MASC recommends, it doesn't actually say you have to do it.
Recommends to urge.
Right, recommends it, so
There's no teeth behind it.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Jay's going to now add a recommendation section to his weekly newsletter,
yeah.
right?
Recommend is to recycle, recommend.
Yeah.
All right, well, like I said, I don't think that there's anything wrong with this. I think there's different ways of going about doing it, but, gun safety is important, so. All those in favor of supporting this resolution, this was 8, right?
Yes.
Of supporting resolution 8, all those in favor?
I don't know,
I'm going no.
I'll go with no.
1. All those opposed?
You know what, just to be sassy, I'm gonna abstain. I don't know what to say.
Okay, so.
I mean, I wanna go on record as saying
one in
all for gun
favor,
safety,
right,
but I don't
right.
think
3
it's the
opposed.
right way to do it.
Right.
1 abstain.
I'm just putting you to work, Sharon.
Thank you. I don't have enough to do.
Throw in 1 abstain at the end of the meeting, just,
Yeah. That's your second abstention of the night. I think you should.
all right, I'm done.
You're
No
over,
more.
you're over your limit.
All right, okay. Oops.
field trip, I think.
Isn't there a 9?
All right,
We need delegates.
I'm sorry?
We need a
Thank you
delegate
so
and
much,
assistant.
yes.
A backup
So
delegate.
we do have to have a delegate from our school committee to represent us at the delegate meeting, and a person to be an alternate in case that person can't make it.
Just, it's a Wednesday, it's 3:15,
I'll volunteer to be,
3:30.
I'll volunteer to be a delegate, I think, yeah.
You want to be the delegate?
Yeah.
Okay, and I need an alternate.
That's on Wednesday?
Yes.
Yeah, they moved it
like
to Wednesday
3,
this year.
3:30, 3:15.
What's the
Is it right
date?
after our
Actually,
presentation?
It is,
I think it's
Right after
8.
the
I think it's
presentation.
8.
yes.
Do you want to be my alternate, and then we can,
You're all gonna be there.
Oh, that way you get to go in
Would
though,
you
too.
like her to be the delegate and you to be the alternate?
yeah, we could do that.
right.
Yeah, I'll probably just go with you anyway.
And you get
Yes,
to go in if
yes.
you're.
I have
too,
like
so that's good. Good to see
travel
how it
things I gotta.
Yeah, I'll
Right,
see how
you
it
know what?
goes, and I'll be
It's gonna be
there.
the delegate.
I'll be there.
If that makes
It's
sense. Then that takes
Wednesday,
pressure
right?
off
The
of
first
you.
day.
And then I can just come.
It's like,
Exactly,
like town
All right.
meeting squared.
Yeah.
yes. So
Hundreds
Susan,
of people.
thank you very much
Thank you.
for volunteering.
I'll be your alternate.
Yes, to be our delegate at the conference, and then John will be your alternate, in case you can't make it.
I could never
Vote
replace
for-
you, so.
Do we have to vote for our delegate?
Yes, yes, even though we've already basically told you you're going to do it, yes, I will take
I
a
make a
motion.
motion that Sue be our delegate to the MSC convention.
Why don't we add, do you want to add John?
John be the alternate.
All right,
Okay, I'll second it since John is the alternate.
all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0 in favor of Susan being our delegate.
So is this why there's no meeting on November 7th? Is
That's
normally,
because it's election.
thank goodness, I was gonna try to weasel out of that meeting because I would be waiting for election results.
Yes, that's an
At my
election, so
house,
we
so-
have no meeting that night.
Yeah, no, and it isn't because of the conference, though.
Oh, okay, thank you.
The conference just happens to be the
Yeah.
next day.
So that's,
I said it's a little
Yes.
early this year, I think, right?
right
Isn't it? Maybe by a week?
It's actually
Well,
later.
it's just that the first Tuesday usually falls earlier. This is like the latest of a Tuesday, so just odd. Well, thank you for that. That was the fourth item tonight. And then last, I just had one field trip which you're seeking your approval for. This is McCarthy Middle School, grade 7 students going to see the performance. So I forgot to put it in the note. It's a Christmas Carol on, in December at the Palace Theater up in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's just a day trip, but it is out of state. So just recommending your approval for that.
I make a motion to approve the McCarthy Middle School 7th grade field trip to Manchester, New Hampshire on December 8th, 2023.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
5-0.
That's all I have.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any liaison reports? Anybody?
Want to go first?
I'm sure, I attended CHIP's PTO meeting last night, and I marvel at all they do at their meetings. They do a fabulous job with their fundraisers and their enrichments. The fundraisers that they're really pushing now are school photos, which I don't know if the general public is aware that school photos generate a lot of money back to the schools. So they work, each PTO works as part of the Chelmsford Council of Schools, and they get money back from the photos. So they really count on that as a great fundraiser. And another one that they're doing at CHIPS and Lions Pride, they're going to be participating in Square One Art also, which a lot of the other schools do too. So they're really trying to spread that to parents, that this isn't just a way for you to buy something and get something cute for your kids, which it is, but they get some good money back from doing that too. And that, I know when I was teaching, Square One Art was something you would do at home and you'd submit the artwork and then it would go through the schools to get it back. At CHIPS, the teachers actually work with the kids to make sure every single student has a submission. Doesn't mean every parent has to purchase something, but every single student gets to participate with a piece of artwork that gets submitted, and they at least get a little sticker back. So I think that's really great that they're doing that, so I commend them for that. They're a good, very, very hard-working bunch of, small group of parents, but really hardworking.
Thank you.
And fun. I had 2 meetings. The first was the high school on the 26th. They basically reaffirmed their, committed on their board. Everybody was selected and they have a full board. They've added a social media coordinator position to their board. They decided on what they were doing throughout the year for staff enrichment. And they're also looking for the decision on whether or not it's going to be supported this year by administration. PTO is looking for one good fundraiser they can have, possibly on an annual basis, for the after-prom budget, which they, most of the stuff is really given. It's volunteered by parents and so on, it's gifted. But it's not enough. They look for decorations, those kinds of things. So they're looking for one fundraiser. They may do some dining to donate, that type of thing. Last year's after prom, they discussed it, was a huge success. They had the most participants ever, and they're planning accordingly for this year. For the Center School PTO, it was amazing to see two extremely dedicated group of parents. They had a very large turnout, and they also had the ability to Zoom in, which was great. The principal and the vice principal were at this PTO meeting, and they gave a report. Their fundraiser in September is Spirit Wear Shop, where you can shop online for your spirit wear. Picture Day, October 13th, the same thing. They have their big ice cream social coming up. It's October 5th, this week, and they have two seatings because they have so many people that come. So it's from 5 to 6 and 6 to 7. And then they have their trunk or treat, October 21. Their recycle day is coming up. So junk day is November 4th. And they do this in conjunction with McCarthy Middle School. They've planned all of their monthly staff appreciation events. They're doing something monthly. And they ran a volunteer interest survey and got a pretty good response back. They're hoping that continues throughout the year. And they're creating a school opt-in directory that all families can opt to be in for their school. And it's online.
Great, thank you.
Just a
Dennis?
quick one, Chelmsford Alumni Association is tomorrow night. And also, could we get the liaison assignments updated on the website? We don't have the 23, 24 on there.
Sure.
Just so if any group is looking for who the liaison is to contact, they know who to go to.
For what?
The liaison assignments are updated on the website.
Oh,
They're the old ones.
Yes,
And I was just say Parker and Byram tomorrow.
thank you. I had South Row last night. They also had an excellent turnout of parents. It was really nice to see some new faces there. And always great to see people coming back for another year to volunteer. It's just a really terrific group of people to work with. They recently had their ice cream social, and it was very well attended and very successful. Mark your dates, because Saturday, October 14th is the Pumpkin Fair. All right, from 11 to 3. They're also running a Spirit Wear fundraiser. It's currently open and closes on October 18th. And they're looking at a new year-round fundraiser for Raise Right gift cards. And they talked about that last night, which sounds like a really great opportunity for just kind of ongoing fundraising. And that's it. All right. Do we have any new action items? So I did want to follow up on the updated liaison thing. So I was looking at the website, and there is quite a bit that needs to be updated. It hasn't been updated since, I think, 2022. And some things are goals, your evaluation, things like that.
Okay.
So if someone could just, I don't know what the best mechanism would be for doing that, but if you could take a look at that. I know that we are also in the process of looking for a new person.
Correct.
To fill Chris's role. And so if we could get an update on that and kind of where we are with the updates on the website, that would be great.
Yeah, do me a favor, if you do ever come across a link that's like not active, or if you find something that's just out of date, just, if you shoot me an email, that'd be helpful, because I can go and do the update. We're actually in the middle of the interview process right now for candidates for Krista's replacement. So we've had a couple of different rounds with some candidates, so hopefully in the very near future, we'll have an announcement on that.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have any other action items?
Yeah, I just wondered, do we need to have some sort of working session between now and the 24th? When we meet with our delegation, just talk about what we're going to discuss with them?
Maybe we could make it one long working session to not only talk about what we're going to talk to our reps about, but also what we're presenting at the.
Yeah, no,
conference. Yeah,
I was gonna
yeah.
piggyback on that too, but I don't know. I know that we're supposed to meet with them the 24th, right?
Correct. Yeah, I was going to put together just like a little draft, almost like agenda for you, just as like a report for the next school committee meeting.
Okay.
But if you want to carve out some time that night, I mean, we certainly could either do it at the meeting, we could do it before, after, or a different day. And we do need to actually meet before we go to the Cape too.
Right.
So, I mean, we could have the regular school committee meeting in 2 Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And then if you wanted to meet, after that, a Wednesday or Thursday or something, we could do the prep for the state delegation meeting and the Cape. It's up to you when you want to do it.
The 18th would not work for me. We also have council of schools that day, I believe. So,
Yeah.
did you want to do it on the 17th, after the meeting, prior to the meeting?
I mean, we're not gonna have an executive session now before that meeting on the
Correct.
17th, so we could maybe do an executive session at 5, and we have an hour to work on those things, I don't know, is that enough time, you think?
Yes, actually, I don't think we would call it an executive session. We'd have to
It'll
call
be
it a working session.
Yeah, working session, yeah.
You
We're
wanna
not
do-
having an executive session, so.
So the next school committee meeting, working session?
Yeah, I think so, from.
Right before our regular meeting?
Well, this is for the
Okay.
delegation. Well, I'll work with you on it. So on the Tuesday, the 17th,
Yeah.
you want to do like a 5 o'clock working session?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do that in that one. Time.
Do you mind if that's not televised?
No.
Okay, just because I'm just thinking like, well, telemedia will come at 6 to do the
Yeah.
regular meeting.
Yeah, there's a working session,
All
we
right,
don't
we'll do
usually
working
televise
session at
those.
5, that's fine. Okay.
Town meeting's the 16th, but that's fine.
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah, town
We
meeting
might all
is
be
the 16th.
16th and 19th.
It's fine.
Are there any other new items or action items for upcoming agendas? Okay, nobody for second public comment?
No.
Then with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. 5-0. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.